Good morning and welcome to the live Q&A here in the Manager Critic group. It is Friday, the 12th of January, and I've had a bit of a brainwave this morning, but the whole group, and thank you so much for those of you who've answered the post about the manifesto. You know, what does this community mean to you? What are you getting from it? And at the heart of all of that is listening skills. We're a community that are committed to non-judgmental listening, both of ourselves and of each other. And so Fridays, I'm going to be a bit more strategic, that I'm actually going to be training, teaching, sharing with you some of the things that I've learned over the last 10 years in training in extreme listening, where I listen to my clients without giving any opinions of my own or judgments. And I want to just talk about all the different kinds of listening, because it's one word, listening, and people might say I want to improve my listening skills, or you might complain to your family, friends, staff members, clients, or they just don't listen. But actually, it's more complex than that. It's not just one word. There's lots of levels of listening. And I want to talk a little bit more about that today. And what I want to invite you to do is, whenever I put the post up to say we've got live Q&A on Friday, if you think about listening skills, maybe you're finding it difficult to listen to yourself without judgment. Maybe that you're talking about everything that's not working. And therefore, put your challenges in, put it in the group, put it in the live Q&A thing, whatever your challenges are regarding either being listened to or listening to other people or listening to yourself, because that's kind of the three perspectives that we're going to be focusing on. Please share them in the group. I will then do my best to come up with examples or stories in the live Q&A if nobody comes on live to the videos. And each week over the next 8 weeks, because it's really worked for me having that month where I wasn't in the group proactively, and that the team was supporting you and keeping you mindful and aware in December. So I'm going to work really intensely with you guys. I'm going to give you my 100% my attention with Motivation Monday on the Step by Step Listening page on a Monday, what's working activities on the Step by Step Listening page on a Wednesday, and live training in here privately for you guys on a Friday morning. So I'm going to do that for the whole of January and February. And then I'm going to take a break in March and let you guys go away, process, learn, apply it, and then we'll come back and do another 8-week iteration again, April and May. So that's my intention. Somebody has come on live. If you would be so kind as to say hello and see who you are and invite any friends, that'd be great. So those who've got the book, Manage Your Critic, basically it's on page 66. We talk about the first thing, the reason why, if we want clarity, if we want to get from overwhelm to clarity, the first step is C, which is curiosity, which is all about your listening skills, your questioning technique, and your ability to get feedback. And just really want to share a little bit of a story first of all, because that's kind of my process, is that when I was on this journey, what happens with some people is that when they are stuck, they go and tell lots of people about their problem. And sometimes that telling in it is that downloading kind of process is enough for them to hear themselves, and then they go, oh, light bulb moment, and they can work it all out. So they just need someone to listen so that they can get it out of their system. So I call that counselling listening. That's where a counsellor is listening to what's not worked, what's gone wrong. And it's usually in the past tense, and so it's the ability. So you as an individual right now, just think about it. When your friends are talking about what's not working, what happens to you? So it's a skill that we have to develop. If we want to help our loved ones, particularly our children or our partners that are going through change, we have to be able to listen to them for a period of time without reacting emotionally. And what tends to happen, and I'd love to have your comments in the box below, is when you're listening to somebody else talking about what's not working, what happens to you? Because that is at the heart of all of this work. I came across clean language in 2008, so it's 10 years this year I've been training, and I still class myself as training, still practicing. And I just qualified and got my distinction in personal performance coaching. And I came across Marion Way in December 2008, and I found that clean language was an extreme form of listening. And I became attracted to it and wanted to find out more about it, because I'd trained as a coach, but I was actually finding it really difficult to listen to somebody who was in pain, who was crying, who was telling me a really sad story, a sad experience, and some things have been really awful. And I found something happening inside of me. And it was like I was pulled towards them, and I needed to do something to make them feel better. And so if you're a bit of a problem solver, you might make suggestions and go, well, have you done this? And you could do that. And they go, oh yeah, but I've already done that. And then you feel like they're complaining and moaning, but you can't, you know, and you're giving them suggestions. And we start labeling people like this as being negative and not being very, you know, not open to new ideas. So the first listening I talk about in the book is called Counselling Listening. And we all need, to some extent, to do that. And I think we've become a bit of a society where it's all about positivity. It's all about talking about what's working. And I will be honest, right now in my life, a lot of things are working. And so when I used to see people talking about being positive, when I used to hear people being positive, logically, I got that that was a really good place. But inside, I felt crap. And the gap between where I was and where they were telling me I should be, like, you need to look on the bright side. And I mean, people used to say about positive affirmations, like, I am happy. And I used to like, it didn't make sense to me because and I realize now it's because it was so far away from where I was. I had never really spoken to people about what was not working in my life. So whilst I am doing a lot about what's working, and I'm asking you to develop the muscle of focusing on what works and celebrating what works and noticing things that are changing, if you've had an internal dialogue about what's not working for a long time, and you're doing this as a self-coaching process, you do need to get the system in balance. You need to be able to listen to yourself to what's working as well as what's not working. But something magical happens when another human being listens to you and you're able to tell your story, that story, you know, unedited, not trying to refine it, not making it sound right. I mean, I have clients that go, this might sound really bad, but when you can say how you really, really think and how you really, really feel, no matter how bad it sounds, and you know the other person on the other side of receiving it can handle it, that it's not going to destroy their world, they're not going to think any less of you as a result of saying it, they're not going to judge you, they're simply going to hold that space and allow you to get it out. There is something magical that happens, and I can't quite articulate it, but it's just that feeling of it's, instead of it being stuck inside of you, it goes out and it lands in between and it dissolves. Or you become curious about it. You go, oh, that's interesting. So why do I think that? Where does that come from? So the first level of listening is about listening to the stuff that's not working. And generally speaking, when people talk to you about, you know, it's good to talk, and they talk about talking therapies, there is a huge amount, but it's because, I don't know about any of you guys, but I talk to myself quite a lot. Actually, I'm noticing, I don't talk so much now, but before I came across all this stuff, I would be talking to myself in the car, and this was before you had hands-free, it's before we had mobiles. So I used to get caught chatting away to myself, and I sort of, someone pull up beside me on the car park, and I would be verbalizing. And whilst that had some value, there is something magical when another person listens to you on the other side. So I want you to think about, for a task for this week. In fact, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep it at that for now, because I think that I need to keep these videos really short, and we'll have one thing. So over the net, we've got 7 kinds of listening in the workbook. So we're going to just focus on counselling listening this week. And I'm just going to notice there's a big change for me, and I'm going to celebrate that with myself, because normally I want to tell you all 7 of them straight away. So we'll focus on counselling listening. So if you're going to do this as a self-coaching exercise, this is where you allow yourself to write down, or you can record it on a video, or you can record it on an audio, and you just tell your story. You don't need to edit it. You don't need to improve it. You don't have to make it sound nice. You can just tell it as it is, as you know, without any airs and graces. So that's for self-coaching. So you just free write. One of the best times to do this, there's a lot of book called The Artist's Way, and they talk about the morning pages. And I find when I'm writing for my book, that to actually go on the retreats, the reason I go on the retreats is because I can wake up in the morning, whatever time it is, and just write. And there's something that happens between when you're in your sleep mode and sort of transitioning into being conscious again, that if you just write without editing, you can just write it all down. And the exercise in there, they talk about writing 3 pages of A4, put it in an envelope, but don't read it, because all you're doing is getting rid of all the stuff that's been sort of like the rubbish, if you like, to clear away to get to the clarity. So that's the task this week, is you can do it first thing in the morning, but at any time download. You can do that by writing. If you are you've got friends or family, I want you to practice listening to them without interrupting them, without rolling your eyes, because what can happen is that they're telling you about their problem and you start going, and you're trying to work out how to solve it for them. So if you just honor the fact at the moment that the best support you can give them right now is to listen to their story, whether it's a good story, bad story, don't critique it. You're not the editor, you're not the director of their movie or their life. It's not up to you to give it a review or not. It's their story, it's their map of the world as it is right now. And whilst the hardest part is if they're telling a story about something and it's going to impact your life, particularly if you live with them or you work with them or you want to work with them, and they don't seem to be, the story doesn't seem to be going in the direction you'd like it to go, you have to let go of that for a minute or two and just see how long you are able to listen to people and ask questions. And it may not be clean language questions, because clean language questions are very reflective. They really reflect the person back. But you might say, tell me more about that. So what's that like for you? But rather than doing simply, oh, that must be awful, because that's your opinion, that's your judgment of it, or, oh, I've been like that before. The reality is, when we say those things, our intention is for the person not to feel on their own, but just listen for 2 minutes if you can. It can feel like quite a long time, a bit longer if you want to, but also just hold that space. And I really want you to do that, because I think people underestimate and they undervalue why people pay for counselling, why people pay for coaching. Because actually, if you try it yourself and you listen, so when I'm coaching somebody in a clean language process for 90 minutes, I don't give my opinion, I don't tell them what I'm doing. Now, it's different if you're working with me to grow your business and you're writing books, because I'm paid to give feedback, I'm paid for mentoring. When someone's coming to me to unravel something about themselves, my job is to listen for 90 minutes without giving any opinions. And I may have 3 or 4 of those sessions in a day. So I could spend, I can't work out what 3 lots of 90 minutes are now, hour and a half, 6 hours in a whole day. So I might start work at 6 doing some admin stuff, and I start coaching at 8. By the time my family come home, I would have listened without saying anything for 6 hours. And I think people underestimate the challenge that there is to keep yourself out of stuff, to really, really listen. So I want you to practice it for 2 reasons. One, you'll help another friend out. You'll help another human being to be heard and understood. You'll help them to hear and understand themselves. And if they know you've got patience and time, it will make a massive difference to their lives. 2, you'll understand that when people don't listen to you, why it is so difficult, and that you'll have more compassion and understanding when people aren't listening to you. And then what you can do is start to play around with, what do I need to do to set this person up for success? So one of the things I used to do is like complain because my husband wasn't listening, but I wasn't really clear what kind of listening I needed. I wasn't really empathetic to how difficult it was for him to listen to me when I was sobbing and breaking my heart because I didn't know what to do to help my daughter. And all he wanted to do was to find a way to help me. And I didn't make it clear to him that actually, if you listen and you don't make any comments and you don't judge and you just simply encourage me to talk and you say, tell me more about that, and I gave him a few clues of what would help. And I got him to and I really, really reassured him that him listening to my download to do this counselling kind of listening, that was really helpful. I had to give him feedback to let him know this was really, really helping me, that this was really beneficial, because what he really, really wanted to do was help me. And then also, when he inadvertently, I start talking and he'd go, what about? Or he'd make a comment and I go, instead of jumping down and criticising him and saying, look, that's not what I told you I needed you to listen to me like. And I'm not saying I never did that, because I did. But once you start to understand how difficult this is to do, we can be kinder to those that love us, who are doing their best without any formal training to actually listen to us. So 1, you can change somebody else's life. 2, you'll have more compassion for those people who don't listen to you in the way that works for you to get clarity. And 3, one of my biggest missions is to change the perception of professional listeners. I don't think people fully appreciate just what goes into our training when we're training to listen to people, and what level we're paying attention to, or also the physical energy that it takes. So if you're a coach or you're a counsellor, you know, it does take a toll. So I can get to the end of a day of 6 hours of listening, and I feel absolutely exhausted. And it's like I've done a physical workout, and yet people go, well, you just listened all day. But actually what I'm doing is I'm having my body and my soul and my heart want to make suggestions. They want to help. And I've had to learn to manage that. And this is in the early days. Now I know that by keeping my mouth shut and by asking better questions and putting their attention on certain things, that they will get massive transformation and change. So a lot of it for me is managing my excitement or managing my impatience, because I want it to happen right now. And I know I have to wait. I have to wait for it when the transition is right for the client, and they will make the change when it's right for them. And my job is to hold the space and reflect back things that are going to make them aware of what's happening, so that they have choices. So that's the task this week then. It's now 8:15. I'm not sure who's on live, got no comments or hellos, but I just want to say, so we're going to do counselling listening this week. I want you to practice listening to friends or family for 2 minutes without interrupting. I want you to think about when you're downloading, do you actually set other people up for success? Do you let them know that they will be the best helpers? They will give you the best help if they can simply listen. Do you thank them when they've listened without judgment? Do you acknowledge that they've given you that time and space? And lastly, you know, if you are in that situation where you have got something that's really, really, you do get to a point with this stuff, right, where the story is carrying so much energy. You know, you're so hurt by it, you're so confused by it, you're so frustrated about it because there's a pattern that just keeps repeating in your life, and you think you're going to get it sorted. I hope that this will give you the confidence and inspiration to step up and invest in yourself. 10 years ago, actually 12 years ago, I started my coaching diploma in May 2006. And in December 2008, I came across Clean Language. And I can honestly say to you, right here, right now, that it saved my life. But I didn't go and invest in coaching for myself. You know, I was still on that. I want to help everybody else. You know, I want to make sure everybody else is happy. I want to be a better motivator. I want to be a better manager. I want to be a better mother. And I trained to be a coach because I wanted to be able to be better at helping other people. And I still wasn't bothering to kind of know that I was busy helping others, but not including myself. I wasn't helping myself. And when I went to train to do coaching, as part of the training, I had to, first of all, I'd be asking questions and I'd have someone observing me and giving me feedback. And then I had to be the client for somebody else on the course to practice asking questions. And this is what we do on the Master Your Critic retreat, which we'll be running in Spain this year, is you get the opportunity in a safe environment, small group of 8 people will be training together for over 5 days. And you get to ask questions of each other, but you get to also be the client. And it was the first time in my life where I'd really been listened to without judgment, but also because I knew these people were training. When I did feel a bit judged, or I felt a bit interrupted, or I felt like they talked over me, I was kinder to them. I didn't start criticizing them. I didn't tell them off for getting it wrong, because I knew they were trying to listen. And that's the number one thing that we have to be aware of here, is that most people in our life are trying to listen, but they're listening at the level that they have the awareness of and the skill set of. You are in control of going to get someone to listen to you, so you can pay someone like me, a professional, to listen to you. You can educate family and friends, and you need to be clear what kind of listening you need, and you need to help them to be able to listen to you, make it easier for them, be aware of how difficult it is to listen to someone else in pain and being unhappy and not talking about stuff. And you also need to be able to give that back to society. Now, if you're in a really difficult place, it becomes almost impossible, because your head is full of your own story. It's really hard to listen to anybody else's story, because I see listening as when we get listened to, our system empties out. It's like, whew, and then we've got room to take in somebody else's story, and then we can let go of it. So if your head's full, it's really difficult to listen to other people. So it's a good way of testing this out, is if you can't listen to other people, maybe you're in a position right now where you need to be listened to. And use the group. Put your stuff in the group. If you've got something that's really, really frustrating you, put it in the group, and then those that are on the journey where they want to ask questions and want to listen better might say, tell me more about that. And that's the task for this week. Ask more questions, listen for at least 2 minutes before you give even empathy. If you go, oh, I've been like that, it kind of makes it all about you again. It's not about them. Keep the attention on them and allow them to talk about what they want to talk about, and find spaces where you can be heard that way too. And bottom line, if someone is taking the time to listen to you, be grateful for it. Thank them, because it isn't easy to listen for long periods of time. It's a skill that has to be practiced. It's a fitness level that you have to develop. And the fact that they've been willing and able to give you that time and space, be gracious, thank them, and maybe make a conscious effort to make sure the next time you're with them that you listen to them, assuming they have something they want to talk about. As there's nobody on the call today, I'm going to leave you with that. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, feelings about it. I'm off now to do my planning day, so I won't be online for most of the day, but I'll check up with it over the weekend. Have a great week listening, and we'll talk more next week about what coaching is. How's that different from counselling listening, where you just listen to the story, whatever place that person's at. Lots of love. Great listening this week. See you soon. She says, trying to log off.